a new concept, how to garden. And it's sort of a system of completeness where everything in your garden is so lush and working together that you can't do any wrong. And that idea of having a garden that is very prolific and very entangled and very um, self regulating is a concept worth embracing because it frees you up as a gardener to do other things in your garden. Now, what it takes is you can't just be planting vegetables and hoping to get a lot of growth out of that vegetable so you can eat it. The idea is to have a longer plan where you say, okay, in 5 years, I want this garden to be completely self-sufficient, completely overgrown, working together, and in working in such a way that everything is alive. There's all kinds of life everywhere in your garden. That's the kind of garden that makes it such an exciting place for you to venture to. It's a secret garden type idea where everything is growing together in such a way that you really feel excited about hiding out in your garden and working in your garden and weeding or whatever it may be. This covering of the earth and adding this biodiversity to your plot, to your garden plot, is such a spectacular way of gardening. And you should try to embrace that because it'll make your experience in your garden so much better and so much more fulfilling. You know, it's also time for us to copy nature. Nature doesn't grow and roll in columns. Nature doesn't do this really static type of gardening. Nature entangles itself. Everything is entangled with each other. And that entanglement is energy. That entanglement is that your garden telling you that your garden's doing incredibly well. So this idea of a garden being more or less self-sufficient is very interesting because it allows you as a gardener to conquer more areas in your garden. If I had to, look after this intensively, I wouldn't have time to go into other parts of the garden and to start developing them as well. I used to be a regular gardener. I used to just grow food. It didn't turn out so great with a very boring looking garden. And then I changed my attitude to being a complete gardener. And that means that you look after every single element of your garden. That means you're inviting pollinators into your garden. You're looking after your soils a lot better. You're covering every square inch of your garden. You have plant diversity working alongside each other. You have everything in harmony and everything working in such a way that they feed off of each other. These plants, they use the energy of the other plant beside it to flourish. We've always had this attitude towards competition. The weeds are out competing, our cauliflower, whatever it may be. We've always had this attitude towards making sure every plant has, let's say, 4 square feet to grow. We've always had this attitude of gardening needing all this human input and not allowing the garden to do its own job. This energy is really interesting because it is so visual to the gardener. You have an area that isn't doing so well. You update it with some compost, or you pay attention to your garden. You do a bit of extra weeding because certain weeds are taking over. There's all these little things that go on in your garden that can help you understand that there's a need for you as the gardener. And that's a good sign when your garden is flourishing and it asks you for help. That's a great sign that you're doing something very well in your garden in terms of responding to the need of your garden. Yeah, this is a very interesting part of our garden. It's sort of our plant graveyard. We put plants that we don't want in the big garden, in the real garden or the main garden, and we move it towards the river's edge. And what's interesting about this is these plants you wouldn't normally put together with each other. But again, there's nothing stopping these plants. They're flourishing so well, even though they are just basically leftovers that are put out on the edge here. And that makes a huge difference. When we do this, we can establish this area for future growth. So, this idea of complete gardening is basically getting the soil ready for you as the gardener to make alternate changes in here. The soil is going to be great for no matter what you do in the future in this space. So you got to pay attention to this complete gardening system where you have your soils conditioning themselves for future use. Plants will do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Remember that. Plant material growing in diversity creates so much energy in your garden. It protects from sun, wind, erosion, everything. Plant material is one of your best workers and your best allies in any garden. Yeah, so the moment you as a gardener understand that there's an energy equation, that life requires energy, that that energy needs to be maintained and supported and supplied. Once you understand that as a gardener, you will understand that you can have this perpetual um, garden, lush garden, if you are willing to observe your garden, if you're willing to add that missing energy, if you're willing to cover your soils, if you're willing to allow everything to work together. In that moment, as a complete gardener, your garden will respond in this prolific way. And you have to really pay attention to your garden talking to you, this energy equation. Um, Everything is sort of telling you what it needs. Yeah, so I want to talk about when you're a complete gardener and you really have all this explosive growth. Is it more work for you as a gardener? Is it less work? That is the big question. This idea of letting your garden and your plants do a lot of the heavy lifting isn't a new concept because nature does it every day. If you provide the conditions, the great soil, the diverse plants, and if you provide all that, your garden is going to be quite self-maintaining. You will have to pay attention to things getting out of hand because things are growing too well. You'll have to pay attention to keeping your soil healthy enough. You have to do all those things as a gardener still. But overall speaking, when your ground is completely covered, it's a lot less work for you as a gardener. You can get away with a lot more because you have this intensity in the garden growing in front of you. And that makes this gardening effort a lot more enjoyable and a lot easier. And it allows you to take on more areas of your garden. If you notice, a lot of gardeners, they'll have like their vegetable plot and they'll have a couple of trees and that's all they'll have. And if they did this complete gardening system where everything is covered, then they could tackle a lot more areas in their garden because when something is established like this, you just need to come in and weed a little bit. And that's the extent of the work. If you want to put a couple handful of compost here and there, that's good. But this should be good for 20 years, having this beautiful growth in your garden. And it's perpetual and self maintaining if you pay attention to what's going on.